The first tale I was told about Taoist immortality was, if you imagine that you're going to get married, right? You're like 15 years old, and it's time for you to get married because you're obviously too old, so your arranged marriage happens. And this old guy comes out of the mountains with white hair and a long white beard, and he does all the rites and the rituals and stuff, and you're married and you go away. And you're 15, right? So like a few years later, your child is getting married. So how old are you? You're maybe, say, 30, right? Because they married about 15. So we'll say you're around 30. So you see your son get married, and the same old guy comes out of the mountains. And he looks exactly the same. He's got his old white hair and his old white beard, and he does the rites and the rituals you remember, and then he takes off back into the mountains. Weird old Taoist guy. Next thing you know, it's your grandkid, and the same guy comes out of the mountains. And the next thing you know, he's outlived you. And all of your kids and grandkids start to think he's immortal. Because their entire lives, he's looked the same. And everybody remembers that was the guy who married everyone. Grandma and grandpa, great grandma and grandpa were married by them. But if you think about it, those Taoists were out doing cultivation work, right? Doing meditation and qigong and getting the idea of non-duality on their own through nature. And they were the people who created medicine, so they were herbalists and doctors. Of course they lived longer than everybody else. Like, of course, even from the most scientific, rationally minded point of view, that makes sense.
Well, and by avoiding social contact, they also avoided mass disease of the age.
Yeah.
Avoided most of the conflict. If towns were being raided, they weren't in the town to be raided.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the benefits to being up in a mountain. You weren't going to get smashed in a bandit raid in a town or a war. You weren't going to get diseases and plagues that were passing through. They had to get all the way up to the mountain where you guys were. So I think it makes good sense that would become the term, that these people are immortal. And enlightened because they lived so long. Another good word, right? Because enlightened just means awake. But I mean, if somebody in a time period where the average lifespan, we'll say, is 45, 50 years, average, okay? Then somebody who lives 100 years, like, has 2 lifetimes. Simple as that. In a time of war in China, that would have been like 3 lifetimes, most likely. Because everybody's just getting killed, and that's that, right?
Well, the average lifespan, you were old. You were considered old if you were 40.
Yeah,
Because
a lot of people didn't make it. Well, it was mainly due to childbirth issues, right?
Let alone
Yeah.
early 20s,
Mm-hmm.
because then you were thrown into the time.
Well, and that's partly, I think, why all the health-preserving arts had to come around. It was a natural evolution. If you don't have modern medicine, you have to figure something out from a subjective point of view. Your body and your sensations and what you're up to. That's just how it goes, right? But because there was no modern medicine, it also creates a pervasive need to actually practice. If you do this exercise, you feel better. Master told you to do it, it works. I'm not enlightened yet, but my shoulders feel better, or whatever it is.
But it's
And it
also
just
because
continues on until you are actually taking care of your health, because when you're 40, your shoulders work. And the other guys that are 40, they aren't working because they blew them out as farmers or as smiths or as whatever. Totally different points of view on life, though.